Welcome back to Author's Note. Chancellor George Osborne has proposed that companies should be allowed to change the way they value their pension scheme assets and liabilities. While currently, liabilities are benchmarked according to where interest rates are today, the Chancellor has proposed that companies be allowed to smooth the interest rate over a long period of time because interest rates today are unusually low by historical standards. With me today is Jane Curtis, who is head of the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, and members of that profession are responsible for preparing company pension scheme accounts. Jane, can you please explain to us why the Chancellor has made this proposal? And also, can you tell us what the impact might be?
Yes, good morning, Norma. Well, it is true, the Chancellor has announced a consultation on this issue, and we really welcome that consultation because it will allow an honest and open debate of the issues. But what I would say is be careful what you wish for. The Chancellor has announced this consultation after an enormous amount of lobbying by the CBI and the National Association of Pension Funds and a number of the country's major employers. But you know, it's in no one's interests if we look at the world through a skewed looking glass, because the implications of what the Chancellor is suggesting is likely to mean that pension schemes disclose very significantly lower deficits. So lower deficits mean, mean substantially, potentially, lower contributions from the company going into that scheme. Is that in members' interests?
Well, from the company's point of view, you can see why they would be very anxious to lower their contributions into pension schemes. But aside from a desire to pay less money into pension schemes, are there any good reasons to pretend that interest rates today are really unusual in some way, and that a more realistic way to look at pension schemes is to smooth interest rates over time?
Well, you know, many years ago when I first started my career as an actuary, we smoothed assets and liabilities then, and you know what? The profession got pilloried for that because it wasn't transparent. Nobody understood what was doing. So we moved to an approach where assets and liabilities were consistently valued, and by reference to the market.
Yes. Well, I think that the chart here to my left will give you an idea of just what the effect of smoothing would be. This is a chart that looks at Britain's 350 biggest companies and what their pension liabilities would be today and what they might look like over a smoothing arrangement. And what you can see is the gap between how big liabilities are today and where they'd be under a smooth regime is about 150 billion pounds. That's a huge amount of money. Aren't we at risk of having terribly underfunded pension schemes if we pretend that interest rates are not where they are today, but rather where they were 10 years ago?
I absolutely agree, Norma. It's just hiding the truth. The reality is that in members' best interests. You know, what about the security of their benefits? And I think that what could happen as a result as well is potentially a catastrophic failure of a scheme, and the scheme might then need to go into the pension protection fund. That could result in significantly higher levies all round for all companies.
Jane, just one final question. Is there any risk to taxpayers as a result of a catastrophic scheme failure for a company with a woefully underfunded pension scheme? We do have a pension protection fund, which is a lifeboat, but is there any risk to taxpayers if several very big companies go under?
Well, it is hard to believe that the government would allow the pension protection fund to go under, but potentially not. That the rules are such at the moment that's not the case, because the fund is is funded by levies on all the pension schemes.
Thank you, Jane. I think the bottom line is that taxpayers are at risk of having to stump up billions of pounds if pension schemes are allowed to underfund their liabilities over time.